Congratulations for making it to the last session of best practices. I didn't know how many people I would have here because I know some people are leaving. So thank you for coming and for making this worth my time. I am going to ask for some grace for today because last night I started having severe bouts of vertigo. So hopefully if I have to sit down, I'll sit down, but just, I'm going to get through this. I'm Martha Gramon, and I was a caregiver, and I have written 4 books. I'm going to give you a real quick description of them, and then I'll get into my presentation just so you'll know what you're looking at. This is the first book I wrote, I Am Not Alone. I wrote this when my husband was diagnosed with dementia, and after about a year realized that I wasn't crazy. There were a lot of things I was feeling that were not unusual. I was on some Facebook forums. So that gave me a lot of comfort. And so I wrote this book for caregivers. It's little short interviews, 1 to 2 pages. Caregivers don't have a lot of time to read, so the interviews are short. But I interviewed 42, 47, something like that, caregivers and asked them the same questions. And this book is just a compilation of those answers so that people can read it and go, oh good, I'm not crazy. From those, I got a lot of information that I thought would be helpful for people who aren't caregivers. And so I wrote this in a different format, and this is what this presentation is based on, how you can help a caregiver. After my husband died, I wrote our memoir, and this is our story from when we first met to when he died. And I have some friends who are caregivers. They said, I can't read it. I know how it ends. So, but this was my labor of love. My husband was the one who made it possible for me to be a caregiver because he truly showed the love of Christ to me. And this was a group where I had a blog when I was caregiving, and I meditate. And when a scripture would just particularly hit me in a situation I was in, I would write a meditation on it. And so I just took my blog, put it in a book, and now it's just a way. I was preaching to myself. How do I get through this day by day? All right, so somebody was asking what the different books were about, so I just wanted to give you a short description of that. And come on, clicker. Seriously?
Are those all available on Amazon?
Everything is available on Amazon, and I have my business cards over here. On the back side of my business card is a QR code that will take you to my author page, so you don't have to go searching through Amazon for my stuff. Why is this not working? Okay, we're just going to do this the old-fashioned way. First of all, I live in Paris, Texas. And yes, we have an Eiffel Tower. Oh, I need to give you a couple of disclaimers. I'm already frazzled. Sorry. First, I can only speak on my personal experience. I am not an expert. I am not a care minister. My staff at church knew I was not a care minister. I was a minister of worship and music. So anything that I tell you is personal experience or conversations I've had with other caregivers. Specifically people who had frontotemporal degeneration. Except when I'm quoting other caregivers, it's my experiences and my opinions. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Every caregiver is different. Every person is different. You have to listen, and they will tell you what they need if they think you care. Bear with me if this gets real. This is the first time I've done this presentation since my husband died. And I thought it would be easier. And when I did my dry run, I found out it's going to be a heck of a lot harder. So, little piece of advice. If I start to cry, don't look at me. Don't come and hug me. Don't do anything. Give me a moment to get myself together, and we will get through this. If somebody is nice to me, we're not going to finish the presentation. So, just so you know. And I will talk a little bit more about that. There are times when to be nice to me, and there's times when you just pretend that this is normal, because crying is my normal. What I do bring to the table, even though I'm not an expert, is I'm willing to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. I will tell you anything you want to know, even if it's embarrassing, because it's important that you know these things. I say I'm a caregiver with a big mouth. I firmly believe with all my heart we can make a difference. And today I'm wearing a necklace that my best friend who's sitting back here gave me. And it says, one person can make a difference, and you are that person. So, I live in Paris, Texas. And yes, we have an Eiffel Tower. And it's Texas style. We have a cowboy hat on top of it. There is a story as to why that happened, but I won't waste your time with that. There is a movie about Paris, Texas, came out in 1984, and no, I haven't seen it. So, I am a storyteller. I'll try not to read lists to you. There are a few lists in this presentation that I will go through, but I prefer to tell stories because I think it makes it more real. So I'm going to start. Before I do that, let me ask, how many people in here have been a caregiver? Okay, a good bunch of you. So I'll be interested in your feedback and let me know if I'm hitting the nail on the head or not. I'm going to start with my story. I'm going to introduce the characters. The first one is me. I'm a musician. I'm a scholar. I'm a retired minister of worship. And now I'm a widow. I'm also a mother and a grandmother, and any Gigi would be remiss if she didn't put her pictures of her babies on the screen. Indeed. So this was my last Thanksgiving, last November, and this was my whole brood except for the baby Cooper, who had already gone to bed. This is my daughter and her husband, and this is my daughter-in-law, and this is my youngest grandson, Walker, and Whitley, and Hayes, and Landry, and that's my son, Brandon. And they are the biggest joy in my life right now. So, the second character in my story is Stephen. Stephen was a band instrument repairman for over 40 years. He was a piano tuner. He was a professional musician. He played low brass. He was in the Headquarters Europe band with the U.S. Army in Germany, which I recently found out is the elite band. I didn't know that. He played in pit orchestras. He was a church musician, he played in a Dixieland band, and he played in society bands all over the DFW area. He was the class clown and the life of the party. I am very shy. He would take me to parties that were people that I was supposed to know and introduce me to everybody in the room. He wanted me to add laugh at my jokes to our wedding vows. I said no. But I did tell him that I would laugh in public, usually accompanied with an eye roll. So he was quite the guy. Our story is we met on an online dating site 20 years ago, back when that wasn't normal. And he wanted to meet me because he thought I had plagiarized his profile, and our profiles were that similar. And so we started talking, and he wanted to meet me, and I wouldn't meet him because he lived 3 hours away. So he sold me a piano for my church so I would have to meet him. Pretty smart guy. He was my husband, he was my best friend, and he was my soulmate. Until I met him, I did not believe in soulmates. We were married on November 2nd, 2002. In our almost 18 years of marriage, we traveled. We traveled the world. We went on cruises, Mexico, Bahamas, Caribbean, Alaska. My first cruise was our honeymoon. We went on road trips to the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Williamsburg. We went to Italy. This was Italy. We spent a week in a castle in Italy learning how to cook Italian food. We did music missions in Bulgaria and Ecuador. Looking back, the symptoms probably started around 2010 when we moved to Nebraska. He started obsessing about the dishwasher. Now, granted, the man was in charge of washing the dishes every night, and it wasn't the best dishwasher in the world, but he was obsessed with it. We had all these renovations to do, and he insisted we finish the dishwasher first. He began being overly negative. No matter what I would say, let's do this, let's do that. No, that's not a good idea. And at one point I said, "What is wrong with you? You don't listen to anything I say." In 2012, he started forgetting words. And he started acting depressed, and he disengaged from conversation. The person who would introduce me to every person in the room was the one who started backing away from conversation. he would get up and he'd walk away. And so I'm starting to think there's something going on. Thanksgiving 2015, I'm having lunch with my mom and my daughter, and I said, man, I think there's something wrong with Stephen. And they both looked at me and went, oh, I'm so glad you said that. And I went, uh-oh. Okay, so now I'm starting to get worried, and my daughter says, Mom, Kirby, my daughter-in-law, said, he's not talking anymore. He didn't talk to anybody. He just gets up and walks away. And she said, and I noticed at lunch today, his hand was shaking as he was passing the plate. And my mom said, and I've noticed that he starts to get these blank looks in his eyes. And they said, we really think he's starting to look frail and withdrawn. He was 62 years old. So I thought, okay. So we came back, and I said, I think you need to get checked out. Nope, not going to get checked out. I'm just getting older. I'm forgetting a few words. It's no big deal. I'm not going to the doctor. He's a man. Not going to the doctor. And I said, okay. At Christmas, a month later, I'm with his brother and sister-in-law. I'm standing in the kitchen, and I'm talking to my sister-in-law, and I said, y'all noticed anything different about Stephen? And she went, oh, I'm so glad you said that. Because we've been noticing that he's looking frail and withdrawn. They used the same words. We got back home, and I said, that's it, you're going to the doctor. So I called, he wouldn't make the appointment. I called his doctor and made an appointment. And we went in, and I was very fortunate to get a doctor who listened to me. I never accompanied my husband to the examining room, but this time I did. And the doctor looked at Stephen and said, what's going on? He goes, I'm just forgetting a few words. It's no big deal. I'm fine. And the doctor looked at me and said, okay, you made the appointment. Why are we here? And I said, his handwriting is getting where it's illegible. Not that it was good to start with. I said, he's starting to stumble. He can't remember words. His personality has changed. There's something going on. So the doctor ordered an MRI, lots of lab tests, and came back and said, everything's normal. But he had done a test with my husband in that first examination, and he said, but I know it's not. I said, I thought if he was 10 years older, I wouldn't worry about this so much. And the doctor said, no, not 10, 20. He's acting 20 years older. So he sent us to a neurologist, ordered more tests. Everything came back normal. And the neurologist said, just come back in 9 months and let's see if it gets worse. Well, I'm not that kind of person. I said, no, that's not acceptable. I got to know what's going on here. So she had sent us to a neuropsychologist who did 6 hours of testing on my husband. We came back for the results, and she says, yes, there is impairment, and it's all in the frontal lobes of his brain. And there are a couple of specialists here in the area that specialize in this area. I said, okay. So we went to see one of them. And he did his more lab work. By the end of this journey, my husband was telling the lab technicians how many vials of blood had been drawn. And I think the last number was like 38 or 40, even he got up there. And he called me back. So I'm seeing the doctor, and I never am used to the doctor calling me. The day after our appointment, Dr. Sood calls me on my mobile phone personally. And I remember it very well. I was standing in the narthex of the church getting ready to walk out to the car. Stephen had already gone out to the car. And the doctor says, okay, I think we have either early onset Alzheimer's or frontal temporal degeneration. Now, I'd never heard of FTD before, so I went home and Googled it. It's awful. It's awful. It's the most common form of dementia in people under the age of 64. So I felt like somebody had punched me in the gut. And so Dr. Sood said we need to do a lumbar puncture in order to rule out Alzheimer's. Stephen didn't want to do the lumbar puncture, but I said we need to know, because if it's Alzheimer's, there's things we can do. If it's not. July 1st, 2016, he was diagnosed with frontotemporal degeneration. It's early onset. Average age is 45 to 64, though there are people in their 20s who are diagnosed with this disease all the way up to the 80s. It's not about memory. And so this is really important when you're talking about dementia. Not everything is about memory. It's about personality, behavior, language, executive functioning, reasoning, judgment, and decision making. So this was fitting. Everything I've seen, many times FTD is misdiagnosed as a midlife crisis. The prognosis is progressive and it's terminal. There is no treatment, there is no cure. And there's very few clinical trials about FTD, and I know this because we were in 3 of them. In addition to cognitive issues, Stephen was also having difficulty writing, and he was also having difficulty with his right leg. We were sent to a neuromuscular specialist at Northwestern University, more blood work, more MRIs. He also had an EMG and an NC, a nerve conduction study, and if you've ever seen them, those are the most horrible tests. They put these needles into your muscles and then send electrical pulses in there to see how your muscles react. He had 2 of those. In February 2018, he was diagnosed with ALS. The prognosis with FTD and ALS together is 3 to 5 years from diagnosis. Shortly after the diagnosis, okay, so now I've learned my husband is dying. Yes, ma'am.
Is this different than the top one? Is it a form of dementia?
Dementia is a symptom. This is a cause of dementia.
I've heard it as frontal lobe dementia.
Yeah, yes, same thing. In fact, if you've been watching the news, Bruce Willis has just been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. They were saying he had aphasia. Primary progressive aphasia is one form of FTD. So, but again, I'll get to that in a minute. But dementia is a cause, is a symptom, not a cause. FTD is one of the causes of dementia. So, shortly after the diagnosis, I was playing for a wedding. And the bride and groom asked me to sing Stephen Curtis Chapman's I Will Be Here. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Because I had to sing, tomorrow morning if you wake up and the future is unclear, I'll be here. I didn't know the bride and groom. I'm just the musician. I'm bawling my eyes out. Thank God people cry at weddings because they didn't know why I was crying. Because I had to say, in sickness and in health. And when you're making those vows, you have no idea what you're promising. I made it through the song, and we decided to renew our vows for our 15th anniversary, but we did it 6 months early because I was afraid he wouldn't be able to do it. And he had his iPad in his hand. We wrote our own vows to each other, and he had to read it off his iPad to me, and he almost didn't make it through. And then the year 2020, which was my year from hell. In 2020, I lost 6 family members. Starting January 8th, I put Stephen in the veterans home. It had gotten to the point where he was waking me up every hour at night. I wasn't getting any sleep because he wanted to get up to go to the bathroom. By this point, he couldn't get up to go to the bathroom, and I would have to remind him, you've got your pull-up on, just go. But he would still wake me up every single hour. He had also become totally immobile. I was not able to lift him without a Hoyer lift. And if you know anything about them, my hospice nurse kept saying, no, you need 2 people. But I'm there by myself, so what am I supposed to do? Just let him sit there? No, I have to operate this lift by myself. So at January 8th, 2020, I put him in the nursing home. Where am I? All right. February, I was here at BPM. That was the last time I gave this presentation. On March 7th, my mom died. On March 11th, I was on my way to the nursing home when they called and told me they were on lockdown for COVID. And I told them, I said, you knew I was coming, because I talked to the nurse that morning. I said, you will let me see him. So they rolled him up to the lobby, and I had to try and explain to my husband, who had dementia, why I could not come see him until this was all over. On April 16th, the hospice nurse at the nursing home, which also, by the way, let me just say a real quick word about hospice. If you know a caregiver or anything, hospice says that if they're going to die in the next 6 months. My husband was on hospice for 1.5 years. If they can meet certain criteria, they can be on hospice, and the earlier the better. Those people are a godsend.
Amen.
So I highly recommend getting on hospice earlier rather than later. It doesn't mean you're about to die, but it brings a lot of services. But the hospice nurse at the home told me, I'm trying to get you in here while he's still having good days. Because I got to see him one time through a window, but other than that, we were doing video chats. It was the only way I could talk to him. On April 16th, they finally let me come in, and with the caveat that I could come in once a day, I could stay as long as I wanted to, and I had to suit up. God, I looked like I was going into surgery. But if I left the building, I could not come back until the following day. So this was a Thursday I came in, and he had just gotten moved into a private room, and I brought his recliner. And the day I got there was the day he quit speaking, eating, and drinking. So I went home that night, I packed my bag, and I came back and I said, I'm not leaving. And I sat there for the next 5 days. And the physical therapist was wonderful. She would come by and she'd go, I know you can't leave, but I can. What do you need? And I'd say, oh, a chai latte. She goes, I don't even know where to get one, but I'm going to get you one. And she went off and came back. And the hospice nurse would do the same. What can I bring you? April 21st, 2020, 4 years after his initial diagnosis. So, that's my story. The problem. We all know that every person who has dementia is a victim. But there's a hidden victim. It's the caregiver. Here's some frightening statistics. There was a study in 1999 done of spousal caregivers ages 66 to 96. Now, FTD has some younger caregivers, but in this study was 66 to 96. Caregivers who experiencing caregiving-related stress have a 63% higher mortality rate than those who do not have caregiving duties. And a Stanford University study found that 40% of Alzheimer's caregivers die from stress-related disorders before their patient dies. And I experienced this personally. One of the interviewees in this book was a member of my congregation, and his wife had Alzheimer's. And she was in the nursing home when he had a heart attack. I don't know if she ever knew he died. But when friends called to tell me that he had died, I said his heart was broken a long time ago. So this is some of the most challenging behaviors. This was actually a post on one of my Facebook groups, just watching how-to videos on brief changes for bedbound adults. Thank God for YouTube, am I right? And I know you're writing a book about caregiving hacks. One of the best YouTube videos, videos I had seen from one of the people I knew on my caregiving forums, was how to change a pull-up without taking off their pants. Yeah. Do you know that trick? Yeah. Okay, good. It's a lifesaver because he was wetting himself, and I was having to change his pull-ups. And if you have to take off his shoes and the socks and pants and everything, so these are the kinds of things we're talking about on the forums. Caregivers are going to be reluctant to share with you these kinds of things. They'll share it with another caregiver, but not with you. They won't even tell their doctor about these things. Caregivers were asked what the most challenging behaviors they had. And this is one of these lists I'm going to read you. Agitation, repetitive speech, wandering, incontinence or constipation, both bad, late day confusion, which is called sundowning, sleeplessness, refusal to eat, paranoia, refusal to take medicine, hallucinations, refusal to bathe, and choking on foods or liquids. How many of these do you see on Sunday morning? You don't. And these are the most challenging behaviors that a caregiver deals with, and memory is not one of them. When you say dementia, everybody automatically assumes it's memory. In addition, most dementia patients put on their best face when they're in public. They're going to look normal. They go to the doctor's office, the doctor says, hey, they look good. Any doctor who doesn't talk to the caregiver is an idiot. And I actually have...
How do you really feel?
Well, I'll tell you how I feel. I've got 2 or 3 chapters in this book aimed at doctors, because doctors say some of the stupidest things to caregivers. And I understand HIPAA. I totally understand the HIPAA regulations. The doctor may not be able to tell me. If my husband has not given him permission, he may not be able to tell me anything about my husband. But boy, can I tell the doctor a lot about my husband. And a doctor who doesn't talk to the caregiver and find out what's really going on is an idiot. On a New Year's Eve cruise we did in 2019, bucket list for my husband was Maho Beach in St. Martin. He wanted to see the planes come in over the beach. And I said, I can't get you to St. Martin. And he goes, well, we can go on a cruise. And I went, oh, yeah, we can. So we went on this cruise, and we stayed out of the crowds and out of the thing, because crowds are very difficult for him, and he would lose his balance. So we stayed out of the crowds and didn't do much. One day we went on a 3-hour excursion to Maho Beach, which was exciting. I didn't even think about the fact that we were going to have to get him onto a boat and off of a boat. But the captain of the cruise was so lovely and helped him, got him situated before everybody else got on. And then during the experience, he had to go to the bathroom. And the bathroom in a boat is downstairs, so we had to get him down a ladder. But the crew was amazing. 3 hours. That's all we did was sit on a boat and watch the planes land. Got back, they put him on a golf cart, got him back to the boat. Everything's great. He was so tired from being normal that he fell asleep upright sitting on the side of the bed. But he had been normal for 3 hours. No one sees this, because what they see is this when he's looking good. In my case, we're dealing with FTD, not Alzheimer's. So you need to know that dementia is a symptom. There are over 80 causes of dementia. Some of them curable, most of them not. In most cases, the disease is causing an atrophy of brain cells, which is just a fancy way of saying the brain is dying. I'm also one who doesn't go into euphemisms. My husband died. The brain is dying. That's the truth of the matter. The manifestations of this atrophy depend on which cells are dying. In Alzheimer, the area of the brain that's affected contains memories. In frontotemporal dementia, it's the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain that are affected. This is, if you don't remember anything from my presentation but this, if you have seen one person with dementia, you have seen one person with dementia. Every single case is different because it depends on what part of the brain is dying. The doctor explained to me what was happening to my husband. He was unlearning everything he had ever learned. So he wasn't forgetting, he was just unlearning it. Those parts of his brain were dying. Okay, so I'm coming to you from my experience. I was a spousal caregiver, and the people I spoke with were all spousal caregivers. And it's very possible that everything that I tell you will translate to other caregivers, but I can't tell you what it's like to care for a child or a sibling or a parent. I haven't been there. My mother was diagnosed with dementia 1 month before her death, so I was able to help my dad a little bit, but I'd never had to care for her. I'm now a former caregiver. My journey was just under 4 years. In the Facebook group I was in, we called the first year of caregiving the hair on fire stage. You're still in denial, and they're in their early stages, and they still look somewhat normal to the people around us, but we know they're not. I'm a slow learner. My hair on fire stage took about 1.5 years. My situation has changed dramatically now because I'm a former caregiver. So in these next few slides, I'm going to tell you what it's like to be a spousal caregiver. I'll be talking in the present sense, but just know I'm speaking for the other people.
What was your Facebook group?
It was particularly for FTD, so it was, FTD caregivers.
Okay.
I also was in a care group for ALS, and they call themselves CALS, Caregivers of ALS Patients. But I'll get to Facebook in a minute. First of all, we are not fine, even if we say we are. And why do we say we're fine when we're not? we don't think you really want to know. We think you're just being nice. We're afraid our feelings are unreasonable. We've gone from capable and independent to being a basket case. We don't want to appear weak or needy. And we're afraid if we told you how things really are going at home, one of two things would happen. We'd break down into a puddle of tears, or you'd quit asking. Chances are you have caregivers in your congregation you don't even know about because they're not telling you. We're not as strong as we look. We're survivors, we're tired, and we need help. We're stressed to our very limit. Our minds never shut down. We're thinking about what we should be doing, what we aren't doing, and what we need to be doing soon, and how soon is it going to get there. And we're on constant alert. I needed to know where he was at all times because I didn't know. I'd come home, in the early stages, I'd come home and he'd be standing on a step stool. And the man is tripping over stairs and he's on a step stool trying to get something off the cabinet because he's trying to help me. So I had to watch him all the time. He forgot that he couldn't do things. Even up till the month before I put him in the nursing home, he forgot he couldn't drive. And he hadn't driven in 3 years. And he had said, give me the key so, you're going somewhere. Give me the key so I can go somewhere. I said, you don't have a driver's license. Fortunately, one of his caregivers was authorized to drive our van. So, our skin is paper thin. The smallest thing can make us cry or lash out. So if somebody, I'm much more patient with people when they say something ugly to me, or if I'm at the grocery store and somebody says something, and yells at me, because I'm thinking, I wonder what's going on at home. We're barely holding on. We're holding on to our sanity with, I used to say I'm holding on with my toenails. This is a big one. We will always be sad. For the rest of my life, I will be sad. I will be happy too, and I'll be extremely joyful, but I will always be sad. I will never move on. I'm still trying to move forward, but I will never move on. Even in our happiest moments, there's part of us that will be sad. My life is before July 1st, 2016, and after July 1st, 2016. And it doesn't change after they die. In my case, people say, oh, it must have been a relief. And the funny thing is it wasn't. I thought I was going to be relieved when he died. And I wasn't, because until he took that last breath, there was always that chance of that miracle. And when he died, it was over. I had a vision early in this journey that I would once again be extremely happy. And it was a bittersweet, because I know that when that day comes, and it hasn't come yet, he won't be there. I will be happy again, but I will also still be sad, and I'm still waiting for that day. I heard a song once that said, it's going to be okay. And it's going to be okay for me. I'm getting better every day. And it's awesome for him. He's in Jesus' presence. People have asked, would you want him to come back? No, I don't want him back. Because that would be so selfish. He's got it made. But it won't be okay for us until I see him again in heaven. We stopped dreaming. We had dreams of what we were going to do when we retired. We had dreams of spending our time with our grandchildren. We had dreams of travel. Only 2 of my grandchildren met their grandfather. The last time I gave this workshop, I said, my dreams now consist of writing, speaking, and advocating for caregivers. And it's a far cry from what I thought my dreams in retirement would be. I can tell you at the moment my dreams consist of not being lonely. I'm still trying to figure out what my new dreams are going to be. This is kind of a guinea pig thing for me. Is this something that I want to continue to do or not? Caregivers are grieving. Even though their loved one has not died, they're grieving. They're grieving a different kind of grief. They experience 2 types of grief. One is anticipatory. They know where it's going to end, and I knew I was going to be a widow. When I moved to Texas, I looked for a house that I knew that I could live in by myself. They experience ambiguous grief. It's grief that can't be resolved. There is no answer to it. Our spouse is here, but he's not. I was still married, but I wasn't. With every decline, they grieve a little bit more. And I wanted it to be over, but I didn't. I know I'm grieving, but there's no support group for grief for caregivers. You only get support for grief after they die. We miss our spouse. We're grieving the loss of the person they once were and the relationship we once had. I still have a husband, yet I don't. I miss my partner, my confidant, and my protector. The one person I want to comfort me is the one person who can't comfort me. Which brings up the next thing. We're lonely. You don't realize how lonely you are until you come to the end of the day and you have all the stuff you want to talk about and no one to talk about it with. The stigma of dementia makes people disappear. Our friends and family are uncomfortable around our loved one and around us. They don't know what to say, so they just quit coming around. My mother's brother, my uncle, had dementia, and I remember my mother saying, I know I should go visit him, but I don't want to. And I kind of chewed her out. I said, you got to go visit her. And you're not visiting him for him. You're visiting him for my aunt. She needs to know you're there for her. And so it's hard, but they need you there because otherwise nobody's there. I asked caregivers on one of my forums on Facebook what they wanted you to know. And these are quotes from other caregivers. Don't assume the caregiver has a strong support system, such as family members, that are either there emotionally or physically. Most of us have little to no family support. And I'm talking children, siblings, etc. The other one said, I know personally I felt like I have this huge support circle. For goodness sakes, I've got 100 plus people on a support group specifically for supporting our family. But then I put out a specific request for help, and I hear from maybe one of them. Okay. And I'm telling you what it's like to be a caregiver because unless you've done it, you don't know. We feel invisible. Facebook is a blessing and a curse. There are so many resources out there on Facebook. It's awesome. I learned more from other caregivers than I learned from any doctor or social worker. It's a curse because everybody puts all the fun stuff they're doing and they don't invite us. And we're mourning the loss of the lives we have lost. We're seeing everything that we should be doing and we're not. We feel guilty for taking care of ourselves, for losing our patience, for not getting everything done, for having to ask for help, for having to place our spouse, for not placing our spouse, for having not seen it sooner, and for wishing it was over. And I told a woman yesterday who was asking me about her mother had just lost her husband. And the one thing I told her is that the thing that got me through a lot of this guilt was saying, I made the best decision I could with the information I had at the time. Hindsight's 20/20. Whatever I did today, though, I based on the information I had. So I can't judge myself, my past self, with the information I have in the future. So if you've got a caregiver who's feeling guilty, remind them you're doing the best you can. And don't second guess them, because most of the time they're making the best decision they have for themselves and their loved one. Okay, we are overwhelmed. We are serving as nurse, guardian, behavior manager, nutritionist, cook, companion and comforter, maid and laundry attendant, safety officer, administrator, chief financial officer, key decision maker, home repair specialist, activity and tour director, family counselor and diplomat, professional liaison, social worker, fashion consultant, dresser, groomer, physical therapist, occupational therapist, chauffeur, barber, nail tech, researcher, and personal assistant. And that's for those who don't have a job. And one of the ladies whose husband died about a year ago, I think, from FTD, her husband was 39 when she had to put him into memory care. And she had 4 children under the age of 10. And she's doing this. We are worried. We are worried about the loss of income. I had to retire to take care of my husband. Well, first I lost his income because he couldn't work. And then I lost my income because I had to retire to take care of him. We lose our insurance when we lose our job. Social Security disability takes several months, up to 6 months, to receive after you do it. Medicare doesn't kick in for 2 years unless you have ALS, but we filed under FTD, so we had to wait 2 years for Medicare. Medicaid requires a spend down, and life insurance is no longer available. We canceled my husband's life insurance 1 year before he was diagnosed. I'm very blessed. Because of the ALS diagnosis, the VA stepped in and helped us. If it hadn't been for ALS, we would have gotten no help. And it's expensive. A power wheelchair can cost up to $30,000. A used accessible van is $30,000 plus another $10,000 for the conversion. Renovating our bathroom was $70,000. Caregiving assistance, if you can find somebody for minimum wage, is $12 an hour, 8 hours a day, $96 per is okay. So it comes out to about $1,880 a month.
And if you go through an agency, it's $35 to $40 an hour.
Exactly.
Higher than that, depending on where you live.
Right. Adult diapers are $30 for a pack of 12. I mean, the costs add up. It's expensive. I was lucky. I was fortunate. God provided so abundantly for us because we had caregiving assistance from the VA. They paid for all of those things, for his wheelchair, for his van. They paid for the renovations, but only because he had ALS. I kept telling the doctor, if it's ALS, the sooner we know, the better. And it took him 2 years to diagnose it. His father had ALS, which was why they were looking for it. It's expensive, and most people don't have those options of somebody to pay for it. And they're not working, and their spouse isn't working. All right, so what do we miss the most besides our spouse? Obviously. We miss time with our family. Our friends and our family disappear. Some caregivers I've talked with told me that their friends and family specifically excluded them from events because they thought that their patient couldn't be there. And they didn't even think to ask the caregiver. We'd at least like to be asked. So, sometimes when you're trying to protect us, you're hurting us. Ask. Ask, 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 ask. Biggest thing. We miss conversation. One time I was sitting in my living room and my husband was sitting 10 feet away and he still had a cell phone and he picked up his cell phone and he called me and I picked up I said, "Why are you calling me?" He said, "Because I can." Well, I didn't answer the phone. I mean, he's right there. So he left me a voicemail. And I would love to be able to play it for you, but I started to delete the message because I thought he's being silly. But I stopped myself short of deleting the message. And I'm glad I did because it's one of the few recordings of his voice that I have. The message was, "I love you." So glad I still have that, even if you can't hear it. I found later a video back when he was healthy of him singing "Happy Birthday" to me. And I play it for myself every year on my birthday. Which,
I love you.
oh, there you go. That was him. I did play it. We miss our partner, our friend, our love. We miss our future, our dreams, a healthy husband. I had 4 years where I did not have a healthy husband, and it took me a while to remember his smile and his laugh. We miss travel. When we did travel, things were not the same. I had to pack for both of us. I had to pack the car and carry all the luggage. If we traveled by car, I had to do all the driving. Airports. Oh, my Lord. Okay, so do you know the TSA hack about telling dementia? Okay, if you go to the airport, they take you through TSA, and, if you tell them that your partner has dementia, they cannot separate you. They cannot take you to another room and leave him alone. They can't take him to another room and not let me go with them. So when you're going through TSA, and we had a grumpy agent one time, we walked up and he said, "One at a time." I said, "He has dementia." "Oh, okay." Use the word. I'm carrying all the luggage. And a dementia patient will not walk beside you because they need to be able to see you. So they walk behind. So I'm walking through the thing with all my luggage doing this. Is he coming? Is he? It's not easy. Oh, and then he had to go to the bathroom. I can't go in the bathroom with him. So there was one time we're sitting there, and I'm sitting at the gate, and I could see the bathroom, but I can see that the men's bathroom is right next to the exit. And I waited, and he didn't come back, so I'm going back. I'm having to tell men, would you please see if there's a man in there with a beanie hat on? Because I thought, if he's gone outside of TSA, we're not going to make our plane. Seats on an airplane. He had mobility issues, so I had to have specific seats, and I had to help him up to go to the bathroom. Another time on a plane, they had blocked off the aisle to the bathroom, and when I got him stood up, the aisle was clear, but they put the cart in front of the bathroom, and they said, no, you got to wait. And I said, no, we don't wait. When he's got to go, he's got to go. And I told them the situation. The flight attendant moved the cart and let him in there. I was also very fortunate that people around me would see me trying to put all the luggage away, and I had men who'd say, can I carry this to the gate for you? So he can't use escalators. He couldn't get onto an escalator, and sometimes elevators aren't easy to find. So when we did travel, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. It was hard. And since his death, I've traveled extensively, and I can't tell you the joy it is to walk through an airport and be responsible for nobody but me. I travel a lot to honor his memory, but also to keep me busy, because when I'm at home, my mind. So, intimacy, loss of intimacy. This is something they will not tell you about. Nobody's going to tell you this, but first of all, the disease can cause erectile dysfunction. And so the physical relationship changes. And even if it doesn't, with a dementia patient, it just feels wrong to have sex with somebody with the mind of a 12-year-old. February 14th, 2017 was the last time I made love to anybody, because at that point I knew, and when I was doing it, I knew it would be the last time I would. He forgot that he couldn't, up until the day he died, 5 days before he died, he'd say, let's go. And I went, you can't. I said, I'd love to, but you can't. So some spouses become apathetic and uninterested, and other spouses, again, depending on what part of the brain is atrophied, become abusive. Emotionally and physically and mentally abusive, in which case sex is rape. And so there's a lot of women who are traumatized from years of abuse from a dementia patient. We miss our independence because we're on 24/7. We can't even run a quick errand without planning. Somebody's got to come sit with him so I can run to the grocery store. Can't leave him alone for more than 15, 30 minutes. Or I had to take him with me, which, that was fun. So just having 30 minutes to run to the grocery store. Now, Instacart became an amazing thing for me. I'll talk about that a little bit. So what surprises us? If you haven't walked down the road, you don't really understand what it's like. It's easy to, I can tell you all of this, but until you're dealing with it 24/7, you really have no idea just how stressful it really is. I know I was clueless, and I've said some really stupid things to people who are grieving or going through something. I'm very patient with people who say stupid things because I've said them all. You need to understand, we did not ask to be a caregiver. We did not train to be a caregiver most of the time. And in most cases, we don't want to be a caregiver. I had a researcher ask me one time, have you found purpose in your caregiving? Pardon the language, my answer was, hell no, I don't. Because I don't want to be his caregiver. I want to be his wife. In fact, that's the title of this book, The Path Not Chosen. Nobody chooses to do that. Well, if you're a professional caregiver, you do, but not to take care of your spouse. There's something else I was going to say, but now totally went out. So, first of all, it surprises us how strong we are. Caregiving's not for wimps. We never knew we could do what we had to do. I hated cleaning up after my children when they were little. If they would vomit, I'd send my husband to clean it up, and I'm taking care of the kids because I can't be around that or I'm going to do. And now I'm changing poopy diapers on an adult. I'm having to take off urine-drenched pants and socks and shoes. yes, it was gross, but it was part of loving him. And he would sit there with tears in his eyes and say, I am so sorry. I said, you're not doing this. You didn't do this. This is the disease. We're fighting it together. We're a team. I was surprised by how patient I was. I am not a patient person. We all staffs of churches, you do your personality assessments and everything, and are you an apostle, or are you an entrepreneur, what are you? And we were sitting around trying to guess, each person's personality, and our director of care said, oh, well, Martha's a shepherd. And the rest of the staff said, oh no, she is not a shepherd. It's definitely situational. I don't know that I could do that for anybody else, but I could do that for my spouse. Love. I was surprised how much I loved him and how willing I was to take care of him. I'm a very selfish person intrinsically, so that love made me into the person who could put everything aside and take care of him. One of my meditations in here was on Corinthians 13. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. And I did for that 4 years. The other thing that surprises us, tears. I asked a friend whose mother died of dementia, when did the tears stop? And I now know the answer. They don't. They don't. My normal is to cry every day. I mean, I'm doing pretty good so far. I've cried more since 2016 than I have my entire life. We are the good and the bad. Okay, so now I'm going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of how you can help. We're surprised by the loss of support. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm one page ahead. We're surprised by the loss of support. When we were given the prognosis, the doctor said 2 to 20 years. What? In other words, they don't know. And there are people who are dealing with this for over 20 years. My husband's cousin lives here in Phoenix, and her husband had a brain injury. They were doing sinus surgery, and they slipped and they punctured the front of his brain. He has no short-term memory. She has no idea how long she's going to be caring for him. Support is good for the first month, and it disappears. If you aren't living it, you don't understand just how hard it is, and we are looking at a sentence of 2 to 20 years. Don't make a promise you aren't going to keep. If you say you're going to be there or do something, do it. We don't want to call and remind you to give us a gift. My small group, I loved them dearly. 6 couples besides my husband and myself. And when he was diagnosed, they said, there's 6 of us, 6 couples, we're going to bring you a meal a week, and we're just going to rotate, and it's just going to keep going. And we're going to bring you a meal a week. 6 couples. Lasted 3 weeks. And it wasn't that big of a deal to me, except for the fact that each week I wondered, are they going to bring me something? Do I need to plan something for tonight or not? And I didn't blame them. Life gets in the way. So it's hard. It's hard to remember that somebody else is going through this because your life gets in the way. So, the good and the bad. Okay, so these are the places that caregivers find comfort. And if you hear these, you see these, you can find ways to help them. I'll get into very specific ways to help. But just knowing this will tell you where to find this. And by the way, I didn't mention this at the beginning. I do not have copies of my slides, but I do have my business card over here. Email me. I will talk to you. I will send you anything you want. I will send you everything. So, where do we find comfort? This was the first question I asked all of my interviewees. These next 2 slides will give you lots of ideas. We find it in scripture, faith, and prayer, music, education, family and friends, children and grandchildren, nature, support groups and therapy, entertainment, pets, pampering, diet and exercise, respite. Respite is huge. Pampering, okay, that was a good one. I put it on there twice. And outside help. And how do we relax? A lot of these are going to look the same. Taking a bath, dancing, sew, crochet, paint, crafts, TVs, deep breathing, read, walk, talking and laughing with friends. Friends are important. There it is again. It's a good one. Church, nature, pets, travel, games, and puzzles. So those are the things that help us. Those are where we find our hope, our comfort, how we relax. And I'm going to give you some specific ways to deal with that here shortly. Worst questions and statements. I said there were some pretty stupid things that were said. Some of them, and I know we've all said them, so I'm not going to ask you to admit it, but I will tell you I've said all of these. Well, not all of them, but most of them. Some of these statements can be good or bad, depending on who they're coming from. From another caregiver, you can say a whole lot more than somebody who's never been through it, okay? Because if you haven't been through it, it can sound condescending. Are you sure he isn't getting better? When I would go into the nursing home, I'd ask the hospice nurse, how's he doing? She goes, well, he's doing. I said, okay, stop. I know he's dying. How is he doing? Because they didn't want to tell me what was really going on because they're trying to make it nice. But he's not getting better. He's dying. Let me know if you need anything. We all say it. I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to call you and tell you what I need because it makes me feel needy. I'm going to give you some ways to get around that statement in a minute. At least. These are two of the cruelest words in the English language. I can say, at least I know he's with Jesus, or at least my life is easier now. But if you say to me, at least, whatever you say after that negates my feelings. And you're telling me that I'm being unreasonable because it could be worse. Oh, heck, I know it's going to get worse. When are you going to place him? Again, you're giving advice from an area you don't know what's going on at home, and they're going to make the best decision they can. And if you haven't been through it, you especially don't get to ask that question. Have you tried? Everybody has a cure. Coconut oil does not bring back dead brain cells. And I can promise you that I had Googled all of that already, and I already knew everything that was out there. And there's a lot of people out there selling snake oil, and they prey on desperate people. What did you do to piss off God? One of my interviewees was asked that question. Does that sound like Job's friends? Yeah. My husband, wife, sister, mom, etc. does that. I had a friend tell me, oh yeah, my husband always, one of the things my husband did was wash my white jeans with my blue jeans. I had some really nice baby blue jeans. I had a friend who told me, oh yeah, my husband does that. The difference was, my husband did the laundry for our entire marriage. He knew to ask me which pair of jeans he could dry. He never would have made that mistake. Hers never did the laundry. Of course it would be. So don't try and compare your situation. The worst thing you can do is compare you and say, I understand. You do not understand, I promise you. Is it like you have another child? Again, another one, yes and no. With a child, every first is a cause for celebration. With a dementia patient, every first is another decline. Okay. Another one of my pet peeves is platitudes. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. That is not biblical. He absolutely gave me way more than I can handle. I had no choice but to go to him. And you would say that to somebody who's barely holding on to their sanity? I don't want any more to handle, thank you.
And I don't want to be Superwoman.
I do not. I do not like being strong. I'm a little tired of being strong. The next two aren't much better. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Oh, good Lord, I'd rather die. So be careful what you say. These are not comforting. Now I can look back and go, okay, I can see what God was doing in me through this whole process. But when I'm in the midst of it, that doesn't help. Other bad statements, oh, he looks good to me. Well, yeah, he's on his best behavior Sunday morning. And he knew who I was. His was not a problem with memory. He knew who I was to the day he died. Some good questions. I'm running behind, so I'm going to speed up here. Good questions. Everyone asked how my loved one was doing. Nobody asked how I was doing. My sister-in-law was really good at this. She'd call and say, how are you doing? And I'd say, oh, he's doing really good this week. You know, he's getting, you know, this has been a good week for us. You go, no. How are you doing? Because the caregiver is part of this too. It's nice to know somebody's thinking about us. What can I do for you? Not for him, but for you. Nice to know somebody's thinking about me too. Can I sit with your loved one while you get time to yourself? Oh, come in and sit with him just for 30 minutes. I had a friend who would just come and talk to him so that I could go get a pedicure. There is a caveat here. Somebody once said, well, what if they can't be left alone? You know, if there's a danger to, you know, if they're aggressive, is there's a danger to coming and sitting with them? You can still come and sit with them and let the caregiver take a nap. Naps are big. Or let them get out in their garden. You know, find something that's going to fill them up. They're still on the premises. They can still be there, but they get a break. So there is a way to do that. Can I bring dinner over tonight or tomorrow? So this is one of those things, instead of saying, what can I do? Or can I bring you a meal sometime? Say, hey, I'm going to bring you dinner tomorrow night. How's that? It's specific. If it's specific, I'm not going to say no. If you say, oh, can I bring you dinner sometime? Yeah, sure, whatever. Can I come? My cousin, who's caring for her husband, she's got a pool. She goes, if somebody called her up and said, hey, do you mind if I come clean your pool on Saturday? She goes, I'd be all over that. But if they say, what do you need me to do? She's not going to say, hey, can you come clean my pool? There's a big difference there. Take the onus off of us. And of course, my favorite question. And then come drink it with me so that I have some company. All right, worst advice. So again, there's good and bad advice. Some of this is the same. Have you tried?
I love that one.
You need to place him or her. You don't know, so stay out of it. You can sit there and listen to me work it out, but don't tell me. Don't focus on it. Oh yeah, right, that's going to happen. And relax, it's not that bad.
Right.
Yeah. These are all things that have been said to caregivers, so I'm not making this stuff up. This has been said. Best advice, get your financial matters in order. The doctor always says, get your affairs in order. And you go, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm a researcher. I've done the research. So they need a will. They need POAs, medical and durable. They need an advance directive, a living will, and a DNR. Now be careful about the DNR advice, because it took me a year to be willing to let my husband sign a DNR. He wanted to sign one the first day. And I said, whew, I'm not ready there. Give me some time to process. But after about a year, I said, okay, yeah.
Get all of the passwords and usernames for every single possible thing that you were signed up on the internet.
This is my next one, is that I had a death checklist. And I had offered to do a workshop on this, and it wasn't one of the ones that got chosen. But if you want a copy of my death checklist, email me. I'll send it to you. I was able to settle his estate in 6 weeks. And it was because I did all of, if you're in a caregiving situation, you have time to get these things done. We had transfer on death deeds done. I had a list that the day he died, this is what I needed to do. The week after he died, this is what I needed to do. And I had it all into a database where I had the documents that I needed to do each step right there. So I could sit on the phone and I could call. One of the things on my list was I had a young lady who was a friend of mine, and there were a couple of people I needed to call personally when he died. But there were a lot of people who were going to want to know, but I didn't need to be the person who called them. So I gave her that list. I called her and said, start the calls. So I didn't have to call everybody. I just called my son, my daughter, his brother, those people. Very important. Tell them to go see the funeral director now. Because on the day that he died, I was in no position to make these decisions. I had made all those decisions ahead of time. And it made a big difference.
Having them sign stuff before mine did not know who it was. So
Right.
Having them sign things before they could kind of put it off.
Absolutely.
It makes everything.
The earlier you do it, the better. And I would tell him, I said, okay, I'm planning my funeral. What do you think you would want for yours? Because he didn't really want to think about it. So I'd say, this is what I want for mine. What do you think you might want for yours? And that's how I got him to tell me the things that he wanted.
And often as churches, you could have them come in and they will we'll do a seminar, like helping you get those things in order, what questions to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
That was really helpful for my mom.
Yeah. And so, yeah. Live one day at a time. Live in the moment and keep on living. Again, be careful how you do that. It's easy to come in as condescending and say, oh, you're not doing, but anything you can do to help them, just one day at a time, because it's real easy to start worrying about what's going to happen. My poor hospice nurse, I'd say, okay, what's going to happen next? And she'd say, not yet. I said, no, what's the next step? I don't need to know the 3 steps out, but what's going to be the next step, so I'll be ready for it. Make memories. Come in early as you possibly can, and take videos of their person telling stories. There were so many stories my husband told me, and I wish I had them on video. By the time we did video him, he was already declined enough that it really makes me sad to watch them. So, right after the diagnosis, start videotaping, voice banking, anything you can. Separate emotionally. Again, hard one to give if you haven't been in there. I was able to sit and change wet clothes because I just separated. I was just doing the job that I needed to do at the time. If I had thought about what was going on, I would have been horrible. Careful how you answer that. Don't get ahead of the disease, just what I was talking about. I only wanted to know the next step, to focus on the next step. I knew what the next 3 steps were. More advice. Look after yourself, relax, help them do this. They cannot do this on their own. It's just another thing to do unless you help. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And you need to remember that this is a marathon, not a sprint, because help is good for the first month. But they're still struggling for the next 4 years. Don't do it alone. Ask, and don't make them ask. Just say, hey, what can I do? Give yourself time, grace, and trust yourself. I can't tell you how many caregivers I say, you do know what's best. You just aren't trusting yourself that you know what's best. You do. Let them say no. Ask them, but then tell them it's okay to say no. It's okay to be angry. God can take it. And there will be tears, and it's okay to cry. My staff at church knew that if they saw me with a red nose, just keep on moving. I was going to be okay. I'm going to cry. I cry all the time now, and I don't apologize. It's just what happens. Okay, what do we need? This is getting into the specifics now. We need help with our list. We need somebody to come help with our housework, our routine maintenance. My husband did the snow removal. You don't even have to ask me if you want to come shovel my drive. Just come do it. I promise you, I'm not going to tell you no. Mow my grass, weed my, clean the gutters, fix the toilet. If you're having to do it at your house, I'm having to do it at my house, and I'm probably doing it because my husband did it. If it's a wife that the husband's dealing with, he probably needs help with the laundry and the house cleaning and the cooking. Ask them what they need. Go get the groceries for them, or give them a gift certificate to Instacart. We need time alone with our friends. So come sit with him so I can get away and have a glass of wine with somebody. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that worked really well, especially if you have any pastors in here, is we had a lot of therapies that came in, and one of the ones that I got responded to the most was music. And that's a really good entry point for pastors or anybody to come in and be like, I don't know what to say. Or maybe they're not even talking. Maybe they're in that state where they're past, where they can have a conversation with them. They respond to music very much. And so you can bring somebody in that somebody played like hymns one time with my dad, and then the next time they played Elvis, because that was the ear.
Yeah.
And so it was all those things that's easy if you don't know what to say. Sometimes you have that skill set. You can bring in a guitar or something like that.
That's excellent. One of his companions had a guitar, and when he would come, they would just sit on the back patio and sing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And it's soothing for the person that's there, because they sometimes feel like they have to entertain you while you're sitting there, and they have to talk to you because you feel more comfortable talking to them.
Oh.
It allows them to walk away and do what they need to do. In that
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. I need to add that to my list. That's perfect. Being included. Ask. We can say no, but at least know that we were included and invited. What do we need? We need contacts. I need a handyman. I need a mechanic. I need an attorney. I need an accountant. I was leaving choir rehearsal one night. and my husband was at home. He was still able to be left alone, but he wasn't able to come to choir rehearsal anymore. And I go out and my car won't start. And I got this young man, came out, tried to jump it off, and wouldn't jump. And so now I'm sitting there going, I don't know what to do. I only live a mile away, so I can walk home, and any number of people will take me home, but what am I going to do? I mean, and this is not my area. I don't take care of the cars. And these two choir members came out, and they went out there, and they finally got it jumped off and had it running, and they said, well, we think you need a new battery. And I'm going, okay, that's all well and good. But I'm sitting here at church, and if I get this home and I drop it off in the driveway, and tomorrow it doesn't start, now what do I do? And so they were going, I said, so do I take it to the mechanic tonight and drop it off there and get you to take me home? Or do I go home and hope it starts in the morning? Or what, and this is where my mind is going. And they're going, well, and I said, okay, stop. What would you tell your wife to do? And they said, take it to the mechanic. So we did. They followed me over there, dropped it off, left my keys there. It was a member of our congregation that I knew I could trust. Took me home. It wasn't just the car. My white knight couldn't come rescue me. And all I wanted to do was sit down on the floor and dissolve. So, we need support. Okay. Anyway, just keep all of that in mind. We need everything. We need and we need somebody to just offer it to us. We're not going to ask for it. These are some things that if you do some of the other things I'm suggesting, we'll get these. We need energy, we need money, we need patience, and we need sleep. So you don't have to give us those things, but give us things that help us get those things. How can you help? Time. Take me out. Bring dinner. Take him out. I had a friend who would come once a week and take him to go get his hair cut. That was lovely. Watch the kids. Hugs. Hugs, yes, yes and no. We just need people to sit with us and accept us. Let me cry. And if you don't know what to say, that sucks. Always works. Because it does. And there's nothing that says it more than that. It just sucks. Sit there. Don't try and fix it. There's no way you can fix it. So don't try. Don't try and make me feel better. Just let me cry. Again, I was saying earlier, hugs at the right time. If I'm trying to do something, don't hug me because, when I was at church and working, don't be nice to me because then I'm not going to get anything done the rest of the day. I'm going to be crying. Okay? So, but you can't bottle it up forever. So there's going to be times just give me a hug and let me sob. Diana got to do this a couple of years ago. We went to go see Hamilton, and I knew I'd seen the show. At the end of the show, she dies, and I'm going to cry. And we sat in the box for probably 10 minutes after everybody left, and she just held me and let me sob. So just, you don't have to say a whole lot. You can say, tell me about him. What was he like before he got sick? Or tell me something you remember from before he got sick. We need help with our chores. Clean my house. Routine repairs. Don't ask, do. This was something that our church did really, really well for me. And if you're in a church and you're in a care ministry, this was huge. We had a director of care, and he found a gentleman in the congregation who had lost 2 wives to brain cancer, so he understood what I was going through. And he was my coordinator. The pastor had asked me, he said, do you mind would you accept help? And I'm going, yeah, I'd accept help, but I don't have time to find the people and schedule the people. I mean, it's just one more thing for me to do. So my care coordinator's name was Chris, and I didn't have to call somebody and say, hey, could you do this? And they go, no, I don't have time. Oh, can you do this? No, I don't. I called Chris, and Chris found somebody. And when my flower beds needed to be weeded, he called around. He found a family. They brought their kids in, and it took them an hour to weed all my flower beds. I hate to garden. It would have taken me all day, and I'd have been miserable. But they got to teach these kids about serving, and I got an hour that I didn't have to do. 2 things that we could have done a little better. I was the first person we tried that with, so I was kind of a guinea pig. If you have a care coordinator, have them call the caregiver each week and say, what's on the list this week? It was only when I called Chris that something would happen. And even better, back here I have a handout of a checklist most of the time we don't know what we need. It took me 6 months to figure out what I needed. And then I had a whole list. But there's a list of things just to start sparking ideas. And you could give this list to them and say, hey, check off any of these that you think might be helpful. If it's somebody who loves to cook, maybe they don't need meals. But let them check that off. And then what I did from that, let's see, I may be getting ahead of myself. But what I did from that is I made a little brochure. And this brochure was things you could do to help me. And I've got copies of those back there as well. So when somebody said on Sunday morning, oh, let me know if there's anything I can do, I could say, oh, well, here you go. If it's on this list, you've got my permission. You know? You don't have to call. You got my permission to do it. And there was things from just pick up a movie and bring me a movie, or take my books to the library. There's little things that you can do. Let's see. And like I said, there's certain things you don't have to ask. If it snows, come shovel my driveway, because I promise you, I hate snow. That's why I moved back to Texas. Okay. Keep asking. Never stop asking, because if you so if you're on staff at the church, you know somebody walks into your office and they said, "Hey, I'm here. What do you need?" And you go, "I don't know." And then 30 minutes later you go, "Oh, I should have let them copy this, or I should have let them do that." Caregivers the same way. When you call me, "What do you need?" "Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm good. 30 minutes later, I'm going, "Oh, I wish I had told him I needed this." So keep asking, and don't give up until they tell you. If they tell you, "Stop calling me," then okay. But and don't be offended if they don't take you up right away. Just keep it open, because they may just not know. Sometimes all you need to do is listen. If you don't know what to say, just listen. Ask them a question. What do you need? What's your biggest concern today? And today is important, because my biggest concern is what I'm going to do when he's gone. What's your biggest concern right now? What's bringing you joy right now? Because what's bringing you joy right now, maybe I need to help you have more of that. Listen, they will tell you if you ask and you keep asking. Okay, so just some ideas. A Meal of the Month Club. Cards, send them a card just to know that they're being thought of. Help around the house. Get gift certificates for manis, pedis, massages, haircuts. Let them go get a haircut. Videotape. Weekly grocery delivery. Oh, meal, Green Chef, Hello Fresh, those meal kits. Lifesavers. Sit with their loved ones so they can go to church. They may not be able to go to church. So come sit with them so that they can just do that. Care packages. I've got another handout over here. It's just a list of things. You can go to the dollar store and spend $15 and bring them a little bag of stuff, and it's junk. Lip balm, soap, hand lotion. But I can tell you I received a couple of those from different organizations, and I pull it out and I go, "Oh, that's awesome. Oh." It's stupid, but it's somebody thought of me for just a minute. Think of the big days. Valentine's Day. I didn't get flowers on Valentine's Day this year. My children didn't even call me. Birthdays, anniversaries. My husband couldn't go out and shop for me, so I gave his companion my credit card and a list of things I would like, and he took my husband shopping. So think of those things, because that person's no longer able to do that. Some ideas for churches. A support group for caregivers. Okay? And if you do this, you have daycare for the families, right? Have daycare for the people, the caregivers, so that they can come. And all you have to do to sit with the dementia is play cards with them, or just talk to them. Play music for them. Just do something so that your caregivers can get support from other caregivers. The care coordinator, like I told you, a list of contacts, people who are volunteering to come sit with them, legal and professional help. If you've got professionals in your congregation, see if they can. That's very expensive. Very expensive to do estate planning. Help them out with that if you can. If you want, I'll send you my checklist. The brochure, put that together for them, a directory of service, and peer-to-peer mentoring if you've got other caregivers. So anyway, that was down and quick and dirty. And these QR codes, this one on this side will take you to my author page on Amazon, where you can find all of my books. And this is my website. I have lists of resources on there. And I am retired. So if your local bookstore wants to do a book signing, hey, I'm there. If you want to call me at any time, call me. I will talk to you. I will brainstorm with you. If you want to fly me in, I'll talk to your care team. I will do whatever it takes to get out there and help somebody. One thing I'm going to ask for you is that if you do buy my books, and even if you don't like it, just leave me a review on Amazon. That helps get my sales up on Amazon. My royalty checks run from $2 to $10 a month. I'm not making a living on this. And if you do that, email me. And if I see your review, I'll send you an audiobook version of my memoir as a thank you. So, thank you again for being here and hanging out to the bitter end. And I appreciate your time. So, thank you.